Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Jets FM on the OFN. That's right, the Our Lads Football Radio Network. And I finally get to talk some Jets football again. A lot of OFN meeting room interviews, and you can take a look at our library either on the ourlads.com website. We have a YouTube page with Prime Sports Network, and of course over on the Prime Sports Network website. But Our Lads is where you want to be right now, especially as you can see the draft guide right here, which is available. You can order it. It'll be at your mailbox within a few days. So you want to order this for sure. You get the draft review guide that comes out about a month later. So this is all that's going on in sports, and you want to take advantage of it for sure. The NFL draft. So did you get your guide yet, Jan?
Not yet.
So it'll probably be in your. Well, you're getting a PDF, so you'll probably get it the next day or two. Yeah, weekends are pretty slow. But anyway, how you doing? How's everything going, Jan?
Countdown, 4 days. You know, all the fun. I wouldn't say fun, but all the rumors and innuendos and storylines, and clearly with everything impacted by the pandemic, potential trades and how teams are going to work. I think today, if I'm not mistaken, is when I think over the weekend, but maybe today, the NFL was testing out the technical capacity for the draft. Make sure that there hopefully will be no glitches associated with it. I think that was going to be today to make sure all 32 teams are locked and loaded and ready to go Thursday night for I think the first ever virtual NFL draft.
Hey, and hopefully last. So, but we'll see. Let's just hope it does go as planned. Because they are the one saving grace for us sports fans. And like I said this the other day, I actually think the commissioner will finally start to get some positive response from the fans. Because hey, he could have fallen in line with all the other leagues and thought it just wasn't a good optics thing, and everybody would have just been okay. He did what he's supposed to do. But he stood tall and he made the right call. This isn't an athletic event, so I'm glad he did, and I hope the fans give him his proper due.
It's funny. Andrew Marchant in the New York Post writes about media, and one of the things he noted in talking about the draft when discussing how a lot of the how it's going to work in terms of technical and the order and sequencing of things. One of the things he asked is, he wrote about the NFL piping in booze to make Roger Goodell feel at home as it comes to the draft, and saying that he doesn't think it's going to happen this year. But as somebody who's attended the draft before when it was at Radio City, booze are part and parcel of the draft, unfortunately, especially when it comes to Goodell, and he clearly has had missteps and mistakes associated with how he's managed
the
NFL as a whole, and certain key events associated with it, and he took a lot of heat for what he's done now. But as you mentioned, this is, at least in the U.S., the only game in town. It is one of the reasons probably why they're maintaining the draft the date it is, even though there's been some pushback, and there was a lot of pushback to move it back, was because he recognized it was the only game in town, and it is to a certain extent a saving grace for a lot of people who are interested in sports in general and want some escapism. It's part of the reason why ESPN has moved up the 10-part Michael Jordan Last Dance series to tonight. To air it, is because of the fact that they recognize that people need a diversion with all the unfortunate events that are going on, and not that detracts at all, but it gives people something to look for. And those of us who are football fans, and especially those who are draftniks, those couple of days are circled on the calendar every single year when it's determined. And even though the hoopla that was expected with it to be in Vegas and the boats bringing the players up to the stage that is on the water won't necessarily happen. And it won't necessarily have the same impact, for people being drafted as in the past of going up and shaking his hand and getting the hat. It's still going to be a big event and still something that people are going to be talking about. Obviously, we are, and this week, and then clearly the weeks beyond as teams build themselves for the future.
Hey, it doesn't affect the people who are watching on television at all, whether it was Vegas or the commissioner in his basement. It's all the same if you're not on location. So before we get into the draft for the Jets, let's talk about the two stories that are making headlines for them this week. The Jamal Adams thing, we'll start with that. I will tell you that, and as usual, I'm not going to completely jump in on either side full 100% until I hear from Jamal Adams or until I hear from Joe Douglas. I'm not taking Adam Schefter's word for anything. But what I will say is, if there is any gamesmanship going on with Jamal Adams or his agent who is speaking for Adams, and maybe Jamal this is something that Jamal didn't even want, word got out, whatever. Jamal better tighten his ship. That's all I'm going to say, because the fans love him, but that will only go so far when it comes to money, 2 years out on your contract. Just play ball. Wait to see if you're handled properly. If the GM and your coach and your owner does good by you, wait to see what they do first. And if you don't think they are doing good by you at a certain point, then okay, we'll come out and say something. But this behind the scenes leaking stuff, and I'm not going to be there virtually. It's not good. Not good as far as I'm concerned, but I want to hear more from Adams and Douglas before I go too much further.
So let me take the Jets side of the equation first. The one thing we have, for the most part, seen with this new regime, and regardless of your view on the regime, the leaks that existed in the past have pretty much been buttoned up and sealed. Right? We don't really hear much from them in terms of information coming out to create issues. So until they're ready to make a decision on Adams, I don't think we're going to hear much of anything. In terms of Adams, him not participating in the quote unquote voluntary or OTAs, right, doesn't come as a big surprise given what went on, what happened last year. So we all both know that he was very annoyed of the quote unquote trade rumors, even though Douglas was approached. It wasn't something that he went out and approached others. He felt meaning Adams, that the team should have squashed it initially and said there was no interest. But as you and I talked then, teams need to find out what a return on a player would be. And if you're going to get substantively overpaid for that player, you might have to consider it. On the flip side of that, you and I both know what he means to this team on the field, but especially off the field. We've seen him taking up the banner of the Jets no longer being the sad sacks, no longer being the same old Jets. It's the changing of the mentality and the mindset associated with this team, which is something that you and I both believed is imperative and something that needed to change quickly and rapidly. He probably isn't happy. I think I'm of the belief that they should pay him, even though safeties maybe shouldn't get paid at that level for the most part. But I think he is a material difference maker. He took another step forward under the defensive system that Greg Williams implemented last year, parlaying his talents and Williams using his talents to take him to the next level. He sees Christian McCaffrey, who was taken 2 picks below him, get a 4-year, $64 million deal. And that probably has an impact on him in terms of wanting to get signed. He's seen other safeties getting big money, and his view is, look, I am an elite safety. I am one of the top in my field.
Sure.
I am in the prime of my career. I want to be paid, even though
and maybe he has
at least 2 more years left to his contract. So I understand both sides of the equation, but as you said, until we see something happen where a offer is proffered or an offer isn't going to be forthcoming, a lot of this right now is pure hyperbole and speculation, of which both sides need to hopefully manage properly and don't make any rash judgments.
Yeah, and I would look. We're going to hear from Joe Douglas in a few days. So when he talks after the draft, he could be talking after the first day, the second day, who knows? But whenever he starts talking to any sort of media, that question's coming out. It'll be the second question. The first question will be on whatever they need to ask him regarding the draft, and then they're going to ask him about Jamal Adams, and we'll see what Douglas has to say. But look, the McCaffrey thing is definitely I can understand then, but look, that doesn't mean every organization doesn't handle everything the same way. I would believe that, because I would probably want to handle it that way too, where I'm isolated on the draft, free agency, then the draft. That's what I'm going to put all my attention to. I will get to your contract after the draft. But in order for me to handle the contract, I got to know about free agency, trades. I got to know about my picks, how that's all going to align for my roster. Once I can see that and I see where my money is, then I'll be able to have a better idea of how to handle your contract. That's how I would probably handle it too. So I think if Jamal isn't getting anywhere a month or two after the draft, then that's a different story. But right now, too early. I mean, too early, man. And I don't. And if his agent did leak this out to Adam Schefter, for what reason? I mean, what kind of a PR foolish move is that? It doesn't even. I mean, seriously, what is he trying to do? What does the agent actually think he's gaining by doing that?
I don't know, because as we've seen, public pressure really doesn't seem to sway Douglas.
No.
He's very much from the Baltimore Ravens, Ozzie Newsome school, where he's not going to be swayed by external factors, and he's going to make a decision based upon what he feels is the right decision for the organization. In the past, public pressure may have swayed a decision, and look, maybe it does tilt them a little bit towards starting the contract negotiations, but as he said back, I think probably a month or two ago when this first came up, or at the end of the season, they need to see what's going to happen in free agency. They need to see what's going to happen at the draft. But it is something that they started preliminary conversations, and we also don't know where those preliminary conversations landed and how far apart the two sides are anyway.
Yep. All right, and then we hear about the Logan Ryan rumor, and this is exactly what we're talking about because there's money there, and all of a sudden the Jets' salary cap space is starting to dwindle a little bit because they have so far decided to hold on to Brian Winters and Avery Williamson. And I don't think they could bring in Logan Ryan and keep both of them. I don't think they could do it. So if they did have to drop one of the two, who do you think they should drop?
It's hard to answer that, almost impossible to answer that without knowing two things.
The draft.
One, the draft, and what they do in terms of the offensive line, and we're going to get into that. And two, how healthy is Williamson, right? And how is he fully healthy? Is he ready to go? And also,
let's just say all things are equal.
And is Greg Williams using a different scheme that maybe he used in the past based upon who he's brought back already? But I think first and foremost is, okay, what happens in the draft? Who is brought in the draft in terms of the offensive line? Who is brought in as maybe an edge rusher? Does that change up who they want? So in my opinion, I would say Winters is probably in a bit more danger than Williamson is, based upon, I think, how we both project the draft might go. But a final decision can't be made. And then also, we don't know what kind of money Ryan wants. And is probably going to be similar to the other deals, a glorified 1-year deal with a potential option for maybe a year 2. And that will depend on the guaranteed money that they give him and the salary and cap impact associated with it.
And by the way, I think it's the best route to go for the Jets is to get your veteran corner here. Take care of maybe a first-round corner next year because you can't all fix it. You can't fix the top 3 needs in one draft, more than likely, unless you're lucky. Unless one of your second, third, fourth-round guys excels. So even if you trade down and double up, maybe you are able to fix receiver and tackle, let's say, but you can't fix all 3. So one of them, and when I take a look at the board, we all know they're loaded with receivers, and if the Jets decide to use, which we believe they will, use one of their picks early on a tackle, then that's why I see corner. I kind of think that there's only one kind of can't miss guy, and that's it. I think the other guys, the Fultons, the Hendersons, and all the rest, maybe, but not in Okudah's level. So the Jets aren't getting Okudah. That's why I think they should go after a veteran this year in Ryan and take care of the receiver and the tackle in the draft.
I mean, unless Okudah by some miracle slides down to them, and I don't think either one of us expect that to happen.
No.
I agree with you. I mean, and we can probably bridge off of this into discussion of the draft. But yes, I agree with you that there's several needs, right? Offensive line, wide receiver, edge rusher, cornerback. All 4 of those are needs.
And keeping in mind that edge rushers not in this draft for the Jets until second or third round.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Right. So that's probably one that gets held off in abeyance for another year or so. So you have 3 needs: offensive line, wide receiver, and a cornerback. you can address all three needs to varying levels based upon the direction in which your draft goes into. The hope is you and I both hope, I think, is that they, for the most part, resolve two of those needs. But as you said, getting Ryan would give them flexibility in the draft to maybe wait on grabbing a corner and get somebody later, especially if you can sign Ryan to a 1 year plus a possible second year to buy you some time in terms of determining what your path forward is going to be.
Yeah, and hopefully this will be the year that we would find out whether a Mollett or a Blasson Austin can actually end up being starters. Good quality starting material corners. And this would be that year. So you give these guys a year to develop, and then maybe it doesn't become that much of a major need next year. So I think that that's why it's just, to me, it makes all the sense in the world that they go after a veteran corner in free agency and then handle the draft with the line and receiver. And we did a mock draft, 7-round mock draft at our lads a week ago. And of course I had the Jets. And I'm telling you right now, the way it all fell down, now this is just our mock draft, but the way it fell, man, all the receivers were taken by the time the Jets won. By time I was picking in the second round, and I'm not saying he's a bad receiver, but Jalen Reagor was my pick. He was the top receiver on my board. Everybody else was gone. So that's the thing that these teams do. They do 100 mock drafts themselves to determine how things could fall. And if they see that that's possible, because I don't think, look, Reagor's a nice receiver, but he ain't no number one in my mind. He's going to be a guy that could be a really good weapon on your team, but he's not going to be that big size body type, Perryman I'd have more faith in down the road. But I think that what that could tell them is if you stay at 11 and don't trade down and don't use that pick on a receiver, you may not, with that second pick, be able to get a number one type wide receiver.
So I'll ask this because I was going to ask you anyway. So who did you take in the first round? And I'm assuming you went offensive lineman. Yes. Of the linemen, who had already gone at that pick?
Well, let's see. Let me draw it up right here.
And unfortunately, I can't see you right now.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to do it here. Let's see. Where am I? Let me get the thing open here. All right. Okay, here it is. So, the offensive tackles that were taken before me, Wirfs, Thomas, and Willis. So I only had Becton to take.
And I hope you took Becton.
I took Becton.
Right.
Okay. So,
and was this before the news came out about the failed drug test?
Yes.
Okay. And I mean, my view, honestly, and I think you probably had the same view, knowing the way we've kind of coincided the last several years. The first thing I heard about the news with Becton was I thought Laramie Tunsil.
Sure, absolutely. I don't think that's going to sway Douglas if he's done his homework.
And my view was similar to what you and I both talked about then, as the Jets should have no doubt taken Tunsil then. And if they think Becton's the best guy on the board, then they should no doubt take Becton here and don't even think twice about it.
And you know what? It might be an advantage because, see, I really believe that Douglas is going to trade down. He's going to find a way to trade down. I'm going to have faith that he's going to try to wait it, because the Jets need him to trade down. They don't need him to trade down 20 spots, but even if they trade down 5 or 6 spots or 3 or 4 spots, they're going to get that extra pick early enough that'll help big time, and they could still wind up with a really good wide receiver, or they might still be able to get Becton.
So my thought process is if you're going to slide down, my view is 15 is about as far down, or 16 maybe is as far down as I slide. But again, part of that depends on who is gone already, what QBs might still be left, and for teams looking for QBs, and then also, as you said, based upon the receiver pool, right? So clearly, those 4 are the big 4. Then you get into, Josh Jones is another guy who's been talked about a lot.
Oh yeah.
In the second round,
he's later
Cesar
on.
Ruiz, if he makes it that far. Cushenberry is another guy they've talked a lot about. So those are the guys who could slide second round. But to me, even though, as you did your mock, Reagor was the guy who was the only guy available in the second round, I think that the receiver pool, in terms of the upper level receivers based upon difference makers, is a bit deeper than even the offensive line pool, which is
Oh,
pretty deep as
absolutely.
well.
You see, my number one guys that I really want to make. I'm not going to be. Look, if they get a Rieger, it's okay. But the number one guys on the board that I would feel happy with, you got obviously Judy Lemon Ruggs. Then you've got Mims, Jefferson, Claypool, Higgins, Ayuk, Pittman, and Chenault. That is a deep number of guys that could be number ones.
And
that even if they trade down a little bit and maybe get that additional pick early in the second round, earlier than where they are, or maybe late in the first, you're still going to be able to get one of these guys.
From what I've seen, Claypool is the one who could be there when the Jets draft in the second round. I've seen a lot of mocks where he's most certainly there.
Okay.
And I've seen Pittman available potentially in that range.
I hope so.
Though he has moved up the board a little bit in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. And because that's but look, he might look at guys like you got Ezra Cleveland, you mentioned Jones, and Jackson for USC. These guys are going to kind of be in that middle to late first round as well, that if they can trade down, which I believe he's going to be able to do, and I'm going to really hope hard he does it, that we'll be able to get our tackle and our number one type wide receiver, and then we'll be really, really happy Jet fans.
Well, the question is if a team is moving up 4 spots, I don't necessarily know if you're going to get a second rounder out of that migration.
I don't need to move down 4 or 5 spots. I can move down 8 or 9 because you're still going to be able to get one of those tackles.
One of them, but if you've identified that Becton is the guy you really want, and you're that sold on him and being the guy,
then you don't trade down.
You don't trade down.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's
right. And you take your chance on hopefully. Look, I would be very happy if they came out of the draft with Becton and Claypool. I'd be ecstatic. Or Becton and Pittman.
Sure.
If I could pencil that in now, I'd be a very happy Jet fan coming out of the first 2 rounds, especially knowing we have the extra pick from the Giants from the Leonard Williams deal that you can also grab another offensive lineman in the 3rd round, which is what I think they're going to do.
And the other thing that they have to they've got to, even if they don't trade that first pick, at some point they do have to trade down. So even if they're in that second round spot, and let's say all the top receivers I mentioned are gone, that's still and they want a receiver, well then that's still a good spot to trade down, because then you got guys like Duvernay, you got Prochet, there are some other good receivers that are going to have really good careers that may not be the number one types, but still are going to be solid contributors. And as I said, how do we know, based on his size and his speed, that Perryman doesn't turn out to be that guy?
He could be. Look, you and I have discussed it, right? So, getting back to our conversation on cap utilization, right? So if they end up using the available cap space for Ryan and let's say jettisoning Winters, depending on what they do, you also have to, one of the things we have to factor in is I was one of those who wanted Anderson back, and based upon the money that he got, I still think they could have brought Anderson back, and I still think they could have had Anderson and Pittman.
Yeah. Well, he didn't want to be here though, so he's gone.
Which would have changed their draft strategy, right? So you have a glaring need at wide receiver.
Wait, say that again?
We don't know what's going to happen with Quincy Enunwa, and even if he does come back, as you've said repeatedly, he seems to be an injury waiting to happen every year.
So you think that if Anderson was here, that they wouldn't be trying to find a number one receiver?
I think they would, but I think the likelihood of them trading down, let's say they go offensive lineman in the first round, right? And this is all hypothetical anyway. In the second round, if there was a gaggle of receivers that were still there, and they had Anderson and Perriman, they might be more inclined to trade down.
If they had them both. Well, they wouldn't have had them both. I doubt that.
They could have.
They could have, but come on. You saw how he did it. As soon as he lost Anderson, he went out and grabbed Perryman 2 seconds later. So
right, but there are options with Winters and Williamson still on the team. You could.
All right. Anyway, these are all we could have, we should have, and it's all gone.
What I'm saying is it's speculation, right? So the point being is what I'm trying to get at now, and probably not effectively, is I would love for them to trade down. I think we both.
We have to trade down. Fingers crossed. 8 picks is not enough with this team. We need more draft picks.
Not if you find if your grade, if Douglas's grade on the 2 guys that come up in his slot are at the point where he thinks he can't take the risk of trading down because he's going to miss both of them or either one of them because of the grade that he's given them,
Oh,
he's not going to trade down, in my opinion. As much as we
yeah.
think he should, if he has Becton graded as the best tackle left or best in terms of by a
Well, that's
margin
that's why I
over the
said if
guys
they don't
going.
trade the 11th pick, they have to then trade one of the others. They've got to trade down at some point. Doesn't have to be the 11th pick. But if they don't trade that pick, they've got to do it with one of the other picks.
So I'll ask you this way, right? So if you get to the 11th pick, right? If you're going to trade down, who do you still want to be on the board that would facilitate the ability to make a trade and more likely a team would trade up with you to get him?
How far down?
Let's even say 5, 6 picks.
Well, first of all, again, if Becton's the only alignment on the board, and I believe Becton is clearly better than those other three guys I mentioned, Jackson, Jones, and Cleveland, then I'm
I
not
think so
trading
too.
down. I'm not taking the chance. So I stay
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Okay. If I like all three of those guys, Jackson, Cleveland, Jones, I feel confident that, hey, you know what? And maybe I get Becton and I move down to 15. But Becton's taken 13, so I miss out. But I can still get one of those three guys. And absolutely, I'm happy there. And as far as the receivers are concerned, I can go with any of the top three. I mean, Ruggs has got all the speed in the world that you just crave. Lamb is that unbelievable after the catch demon, and Judy is that polished route runner already. He's a professional route runner. Almost reminds you, or you would hope it would remind you of Jerry Rice as soon as you get him. So I think if you do move down a little, just a few spots, and let's say Becton was taken, then you go after the receiver at 15, one of those three guys, and then with that extra pick, late first, early second, you're taking one of those other tackles.
Okay, but here's the worst case scenario that could happen. You're at 11, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
You have Becton and the 3 receivers left. You trade down to 15,
Mm-hmm.
Becton, and all 3 receivers go 12, 13, 14. Then what do you do?
Yeah, well, I would be doing home. First of all, I'd be looking at whatever just to see if that would even be possible. And if that was like a 10% chance that would happen, I'd have to gamble. And if it happened, then I would see if anybody wanted to trade down with me. Because I don't look at Mims. I know a lot of some people like Mims. And look, I like Mims. I like the other guys we mentioned, but at 15, 16, I think I could get these guys at 20, 25. So I
Uh,
will do whatever I can at that point to
I
trade down.
I think the guy they target is they may target Jackson, the wide receiver. Sorry, Jefferson, the wide receiver out of LSU, or they're going to target Josh James out of Houston. And I think their trade down is going to be to get one of 2 guys if all the other guys are gone.
Okay. Well, it's gonna be fun because this is what Douglas was brought in for, and he didn't get a shot last year. I've got all the faith in the world that he's going to be able to pull this off. I hope he does, but this is what it's all about. This is what we've been waiting for. And we're going to have a lot of time to talk about it, break down everything. We'll try and get on the air. What is your schedule, by the way? Because what's your situation right now?
I mean, I'm working from home, so if I know in advance, I mean, I'm pretty available. I mean, we could do something after the first round. I mean, part of it is we may want to decide to wait because for all we know, Douglas may decide to trade up. If as weird as that may sound, if some guy who he is dying to
No,
get
no trading up.
is still floating about
No.
there, or if he has traded down, we're gonna have to wait a little bit to see where he goes with the draft and what kind of pick he gets.
Yeah, well, we'll try to get on the air if we can after every round. Worst case scenario, will definitely be on the air. What is it? This is a Thursday, Friday, Saturday draft?
Yep, same thing. That we had all that talk originally of speculation. They would maybe go one per day, but I think it's what day? It's round one Thursday, rounds 2 and 3 Friday, and then day 3 is 4 through 7.
Okay.
So for me, my availability would be late Thursday night to do round 1, and then Saturday night to do the recap.
So when does the first round starts at what, 7?
7. Yep.
7 o'clock. So the Jets will probably be on the board like around 8:30.
It's what it was, 10 minutes or 15 minutes per pick.
First round?
Thought it's 15.
Okay. Possibly.
right? So if everybody uses up their allotment, and you may have teams do that to try to make trades, we're probably looking 9:30ish, maybe earlier for lucky.
That sounds like a lot for the 11th pick.
Well,
But
again, remember
who
it's
knows?
15 minutes per pick.
Is it
Right?
15 minutes for
the
sure?
11th pick.
Is it 15 or 12 or 10? Do we know?
I thought it's 15, then 10, then 5.
We'll double that. Check it out.
10 rounds, 10 for rounds 2 and 3, and 5 for rounds 4 through 7.
Let's see. How long is first round? Let's see. If we get anything that jumps up here. It says here, starts at 8 p.m. and each team has 10 minutes.
Okay.
But we moved it an hour.
I thought for some reason it was 15.
Yeah, but we moved it an hour, so we are going to be in the 9:30, 10 o'clock range anyway.
Okay.
If that's the, let's make sure this is a recent.
10 minutes for round 1, 7 minutes in the second round, 5 minutes round 3 through 6, and 4 minutes in the 7th round is what it looks like.
All right, so you did verify that was correct?
That's per the NFL draft.
10 minutes?
It looks like. Per the NFL website.
10 minutes?
10 minutes.
All right, and then 8 o'clock. So, yeah, chances are then, look, it doesn't...
2 hours, right?
What's that?
Could be 2 hours.
Yeah. Look, we'll figure it out. Bottom line is, like I was saying, worst case...
It's not like we're not going to be watching.
Yeah.
Right? Not as if we're going to miss the pick.
Yeah, but it's not. This isn't like one of those things where I'm like the Super Bowl where I'm like, all right, I've got my popcorn out. I'm like all glassy eyed and no. I'm usually like under normal circumstances after the Jets pick, I'd probably be sitting there in bed under the covers with my remote, just watching every pick. But hey, if we got to work, we'll work. That's why I'm saying fine. We'll find out how it all. And I got to make sure that when we post the show, that if we did the show in the morning and it wouldn't be posted until 8 o'clock the next night, then that'd be useless. Right. So in order for it to post at night early enough that people watch the show in the morning before the next round, then it would have to more than likely be that, we did something that night.
Yeah. And I think round 2 probably, I'll take a look, but it probably starts at 6 if I'm, or it could be 7 this year.
Okay.
I know they used to start it early.
That's 2 or 3 rounds.
I think second day is 2 rounds.
2 rounds. Okay. And that could be the busy day for us if everything goes well with trading down. That could be fun. Anyway, look, this.
Yeah. So here's the timing. So the first round starts at 8 p.m. They think it's going to. I mean, they're saying approximately 11:30. Friday starts at 7, and Saturday begins at 12 noon.
All right, give me your prediction then, or not your prediction, but your Jets stay at 11. Who do you want? The offensive tackle or the wide receiver? You want the fourth offensive tackle or the number 1 receiver?
If Becton is there, I want Becton.
Okay, well, let's say Becton's not there and it's the fourth tackle.
Then I'm probably going the number 1 wide receiver.
Okay. And who is your number 1 wide receiver?
It's really close amongst. I still happen to like Judy.
So do I.
A little bit better than Lamb, but it's literally splitting a hair.
Yeah, so do I. And I agree. I'll take any of the 3. And I'll take any of those other guys I mentioned too, if we can also get the tackle.
Now, again, the key to remember also is how many quarterbacks have gone already, and how many teams we perceive still need quarterbacks that may look to trade up.
And that's why I think it's going to benefit us, because I believe, as always, some team or two is going to move up to get their quarterback. They always do.
If somebody loves love, right, they're going to move up.
Absolutely.
It depends on what happens with Tua. It depends on what happened with Justin Herbert, right? So, and of course we know Barrow's probably going to go number 1. So, if that's what happens, right? If those 3 are somewhere in the mix there,
Love's the one, because the other 3 are going in the top 10. So it's up to Love.
But if somebody really has a hankering for Love and is afraid they're going to miss on him, maybe you get somebody willing to overpay a little bit to get him.
And that's what we hope for. Absolutely. So, and then, by the way, those other defensive players are going to wind up sliding. Unfortunately, the interior guys, the Kinlaws and the Browns, it doesn't help us any. So,
nope.
But we'll see. That's the fun of it. And maybe we'll even hear some news. It's only, what is it today? Sunday? So yeah, we
So I
got
got 4
4
more days.
days for a
Yep.
Logan Ryan signing. Let's hope that happens. That'll make life easier knowing that we got our cornerback already in the bank. And I would have to believe that he'd want to, if he's going to make that move, he wants to make that move before the draft.
Yeah, his negotiating ability may, well, it depends if his view it could either decline based upon other teams grabbing, or it could increase if a team isn't able to get their cornerback, and he's got to play that hand depending on how much of a gambler he is.
Well, that's the thing, because if he's not able to get a guy like Logan Ryan before the draft starts, then all of a sudden he's got to think, well, maybe I don't have Logan Ryan or one of these corners after the draft, so I better get a good corner in this draft too. And
And
that means definitely trading down, maybe a couple times. So, all right, we'll see. Should be fun. But we'll
yep,
talk again. We'll try to talk after every round, after every day. But worst case scenario, maybe next Sunday is a Jet draft, maybe the same situation, right? Is that even possible? The same time next Sunday to wrap up the entire draft?
yeah, it's possible.
It's possible. Okay, sounds good. And Jan, appreciate it as always. Anything else before we let you go?
No, I think that's it. I think we've kind of covered everything, or as best as we can cover right now.
All right, that sounds good. I appreciate it, Jan. We'll talk to you next time. And Jet fans, best of luck out there. This is Jets FM on EOFN.